A large number of Hindus protested outside the BBC headquarters in London on Saturday against its coverage of both British Hindus and India. The protest was directed particularly against BBC coverage of the recent rioting in Leicester.
Hindus have been complaining to the BBC for almost 30 years about their bias when they report anything to do with Hindus or to do with India. But we've never been able to back it up with solid evidence. The reason we're all out today here is because Leicester is the evidence. If you wanted evidence of criminality, of Hindus being targeted with violence, the evidence is there in front of everybody. And yet the BBC chose not to report that. What it did is it pursued a ghost, a mirage, a straw man that somehow it had created and accepted as being real. And the straw man is Hindutva extremists.
Satish Sharma personally investigated the events in Leicester.
So I spent time in Leicester to actually satisfy myself of what had happened, who it had happened to and where it had happened. So I went to Ground Zero and met families whose homes had been attacked. I met members of the temple community who had actually been corralled and virtually imprisoned in their mandir whilst violence was going on outside. That is evidence. The police have recorded this as evidence, and to my understanding there are 157 evidence-based acts of criminality. This is not just casual criminality, this is religiously targeted and motivated criminality, which makes it a hate crime. This is evidenced. Now what the question that then arises is, what did the BBC publish? Where is the evidence of Hindutva extremist gangs functioning anywhere in this country, never mind on the streets of Leicester? Why have the police not published one particular report where they have said, we have found a Hindu extremist who is motivated by this terrible Hindutva straw man motivation? There is zero evidence. And this is where the BBC has failed us so dramatically. This actually hurts us when somebody like the BBC publishes such hate tropes and platforms Islamists. That harms us. This is their version of persecution of British Hindus.
Prit Weston handed over a memorandum to a BBC official who promised to pass it on to BBC bosses.
So I want you guys to take this aside.
The reason why I'm here is because, frankly, I'm disgusted at the inaccurate and divisive reporting that the BBC continuously spews out. We saw the impact of that reporting in Leicester. As a British Hindu woman, I shouldn't have to feel any fear in practicing my religion. And unfortunately, the last few years have proven to be exactly that. Things need to change at the BBC, and they need to change now.
So the BBC has been unfair, it's inaccurate with the spreading of misinformation, and as a British Hindu, I feel quite targeted by the BBC, if I'm completely honest with you, and it hurts because we are the biggest, we pay the taxes here, we expect to have fair news reporting, and we're being targeted, and that's the reason why I'm here today.
When it comes festival, they always talk about negative. So like the recent Diwali, they talk about how the homeowners get troubles in cleaning, like त्योहारों पे महिलाओं में परेशानी. Similarly, when it's Holi or any other festival, they talk about wastage of water. Last year during Diwali, they talked about how the sweets, the snacks are not healthy. But when it comes to other festivals, they are always providing positive news.
I am here to protest against BBC. They've been putting fake news against us Indians. We are very hard workers. We provide mortgage and a lot, which is funding them.
We are just here to protest against the BBC's wrong narratives in the newspapers, which is very much anti-Hindu, and we don't like it, and we would like BBC to change their narratives for a pro-Hindu or a right information about the Hindus in India.
From the day, about 70 years back, it was rope and snake charmer thing. That was the image that was created. The way they've done for Ethiopia, beggars. But now, they should understand that we hold 56% of UK economy. We are the main contributor. So it should be taken as with respect for any news that they give. not only anti-Hindu and anti-India.
BBC must open the eyes and brains. Look at that every Indian people. Don't over to the smart. Indian is stupid and idiot. We are very smart now, very intelligent people.
Bravo.
So yeah, don't underestimate and undermine. So open your mind and open your eyes.
I am here really to make a point to BBC that it's about time they wake up, and the big drum they're banging about democracy in Ukraine, in Europe, in the rest of the world. India is the biggest democracy in the world. For them not to support India the way they do is absolutely out of order, especially calling the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, a nationalist Hindu leader. Would they ever dare call Rishi Sunak or any of like Johnson or Liz Truss or any of the European leaders Christian nationalist leader? No, they won't. It is about time they begin to understand Hinduism. They need to educate themselves, and that's the only way they're going to promote democracy and peace amongst people. We are very peaceful, and that's why we are here to nicely, quietly give them this message.
I'm here to protest about BBC showing Hindus and India in a bad light, such as poor people in India shown in a very bad light, and they show like they shouldn't be trusted and other things like that. So I feel like that's a very bad thing to do, and India deserves better.
They only show the negative side of India. They never say anything correct about India. They only portray us in a negative way.
Because the BBC, we pay our tax, BBC is not giving us our rights. And they're giving us a false news all the time.
I am here to protest against the BBC biased coverage. So, for example, in the Leicester, when the violence happened, then the first person they called was a ISIS written terrorist, and he was giving the statements on the BBC. How can they expect that guy to give us the right actually account of the events? So at least they have to balance the thing. They should have called someone from the Hindus also to give their own version also. This is a shameful thing actually from their side.
A protest by British Hindus outside the BBC headquarters in London against what they see as continuing biased coverage, and particularly in relation to the rioting in Leicester, where they say documented established facts point one way and BBC coverage went another way. The protest has been followed by the submission of a memorandum to the BBC, and a meeting is expected to follow next week, where members from this delegation will meet with BBC managers to convey in full their concerns about BBC reporting.